You might say an old school start today as President Biden seeks advice about his big Supreme Court pick. The president will meet this afternoon with two top senators on the Judiciary Committee, Democratic Chairman Dick Durbin, Republican Ranking Member ChuckGrassley. The president promises to name a black woman to the vacancy, and that promise is being ridiculed by some Republicans. Our reporters are back to discuss it. Let's listen to one of those Republicans right here. Senator Ted Cruz says, "I dare you, Mr. President."
The fact that he's willing to make a promise at the outset that it must be a black woman, I gotta say that's offensive. It's actually an insult to black women. If he came and said, I'm going to put the best jurist on the court, and he looked at a number of people and he ended up nominating a black woman, he could credibly say, okay, I'm nominating the person who's most qualified. He's not even pretending to say that. He's saying, if you're a white guy, tough luck.
Eva McKen, is it an insult to black women? Is it offensive to black women? Or is Ted Cruz qualified to decide for black women?
No, he is not. And I would say what's important about this is that these comments aren't in isolation. If you speak to Republican members of Congress, for instance, which I have for years, and ask them about systemic racism, they don't believe it is real, right? Racism to them is an event that we have overcome. It isn't still part of reality in America today in terms of being ingrained within our institutions. So this idea that a black woman should be elevated, I think you see this kind of snark and this kind of pushback because this is how they view race and racism as a whole. Why are we even still talking about this? It is actually white men that are being discriminated against. That is the position I have heard from many of them for years.
Well, it's a fascinating conversation as we go forward to see how many Republicans take that position. Senator Roger Wicker over the weekend said he thought this was a quota. Yesterday he said diversity is a great thing, don't get me wrong, but he also said he stands by that interview. But Laura Brown Lopez, this at a time when many Republicans think, you know what, we have the wind at our back in this election year. If the president picks somebody who's qualified, maybe we should just make this normal, make this quick, and focus on all the other things we help us. Listen to Senator ChuckGrassley. He's the lead Republican on the committee. He's going to help determine with the Republican strategy in those confirmation hearings. He says he's just going to go to the White House and listen.
I want to be courteous to the president and try to answer his questions. And I don't know what those questions are going to be, but I'm going to take the approach that we need somebody that's going to interpret the law and not make law because that's Congress's job.
It's always hilarious when the roles switch. It was the Democrats saying the same thing at the end there in the Trump presidency. Now it's ChuckGrassley saying it in the Biden presidency. He wants somebody to interpret the law, not make the law. But President Biden said he genuinely wants to seek advice from Republicans. He wants this to be an old school process. Can it be?
Well, I mean, the reality is, John, is that Democrats can confirm this judge without Republican votes. And so even though the White House is saying that they want to seek advice from Republicans, that they want them to be engaged in this process, ultimately they only need Democratic votes. You are hearing a few Republicans praise some of the potential names so far, including Judge Michelle Childs of South Carolina. We heard Senator Lindsey Graham say that he thought that she would be immensely qualified. And also Judge Brown, Jackson Brown, she is someone who gained some Republican votes, about 3 Republican votes when she was confirmed to the district court. So there is the potential for some Republicans to support one of Biden's nominees here.
And so, Dana, the Republican who matters most here is the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, who we all know from reporting sometimes had to sit in his office and figure out, what is future President Cruz thinking? What is future President Hawley thinking? He has some Republicans in his ranks who are going to try to gain stature, gain profile, appeal to the base through this pick. But he controls it, and listen to his words, because at the moment he sounds normal.
President Biden was elected on the specific promise to govern from the middle, steward our governing institutions, and unite a divided country. I suggest that President Biden bear this in mind as he considers whom to nominate to our highest court.
That's called, the Sphinx, as I like to call him, and it's sometimes a compliment, playing it safe, right? Let's see what the president gives us. But if you're Mitch McConnell in a midterm year you think is trending in your favor, you don't want anything that messes that up.
No, absolutely. And, it's always, you said it, John, it's always almost comical. It would be actually funny if it wasn't so serious to see how different these different senators act and react when the shoe is on the other foot, meaning when they're in the minority or when they are facing a president of the other party who has a nominee in front of them. And just on that note, yes, Senator McConnell is going to kind of see how things go and let his senators who need to do what they need to do for their own politics and their own reelection have those moments. But when it comes to the absolute hypocrisy, which again, we have seen time and time again on Supreme Court nominees, the notion of, never mind the argument and the understanding that Eva just talked about with regard to black women and systemic racism, let's just even broaden it out to the idea that it's offensive that a president or a candidate talks about the kind of justice they would nominate. I mean, Donald Trump put out a list of specific people, and he said that his absolute bottom line was that they have to overturn Roe v. Wade. I mean, where was the outrage on that if they wanted somebody who would just interpret the law and not make the law?
Yeah, if you're asking for ideological, intellectual consistency, you're in the wrong town. I hate to tell you that right now at this moment. We'll continue the conversation. Up next for us, this is a big one. This one.